Hi, Claude.
Hey, Sherry.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Oh, pretty good. Are there
Good.
people in the waiting room?
Not yet.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess we are early.
Just you and me. And
I was curious.
I hear you, but do not see you. Do you see me and hear me?
Oh, yes, okay, here I am. There, you see me? Oh, you
Not
see me?
yet. Oh, now I do. Hey.
Okay, hi. I will close the um, video until 6:45,
Okay.
but just wanted to say, hey, I'm here.
It's nice to see you.
Good to see you too.
Emailed Quatrefoil randomly with a PDF copy of my book that someone would read it and be so enthusiastic about it. And I'm really grateful to Claude and Quatrefoil. And Lisa, thank you so much for asking me to be here. I never thought I'd share a platform with such talented people. And lovely to meet you, Sherry.
Wonderful to meet you.
Hope we get to know each other. And Roy, I started reading your poetry today. Thank you for being able to do something that I am completely unable to do. It's amazing. And Junauda, you're just amazing. And I can't believe that we're doing this together. Thank you. So when I thought of what to read tonight, I was influenced because it was coming out, National Coming Out Day 2 days ago. And so I actually, because it's a memoir, I have 2 coming out stories in the book. They're both really short, and I have to preface both of them. So I'm going to read both of them, but I have to preface both of them with, my mother really never cared about me coming out. She didn't really want to know any details of my personal life. She didn't care about my sexuality or gender. She just she hated the way I dressed. So we fought about clothes more than anything else, and we still do today. So I'm adding just a little, because the first coming out story is lesbian is so short. I'm going to add the little part where we just get in a fight about clothes afterwards. So here we go. My first coming out story, and this is 1986, by the way. That's how old I am. I was 16 years old. I'm 50. So I came out to my mother during one of our frequent conflicts over just what the hell was wrong with me. I'm gay, I shouted. I hadn't been expecting to tell her. It actually calmed her. Mom is a problem solver. Confronted with an actual problem, she springs into action. Chastity Bono had just come out to share in the world and also had a mullet. So Mom had a cultural reference that drew aspirational parallels between her life and Cher's. She called Barb, the lesbian from the 70s, so I had someone to talk to. She bought me a copy of Ruby Fruit Jungle. She was grateful that I had an identifiable disadvantage. Something was wrong with me. I was grateful for this as well. Now we both had something else to blame instead of each other or ourselves. My mother has hated most of the lifestyle and wardrobe choices in my life, but she's always been supportive in her own solution-oriented way. This wasn't going to hold me back. When she told my father, they both admitted that they had individually suspected this since I was 8. Might have been nice to have a family meeting. Since neither had a moral conflict concerning the revelation, they both set about imagining how a successful lesbian might look. They got me golf lessons at their country club. Even then, I wouldn't wear golf shirts, and I might have scared the club pro a little, but it was a good way for all of us to negotiate our new circumstances. When I brought my new girlfriend, Tiffany, home, they were unimpressed. It's one thing to be gay, but don't be gay with her. But because of all the recent drama, they tried to be supportive of this new direction. Even though she was an adult, I'd met at a bar, and I was still 17. The relationship was just boring enough to be a welcome departure from everything else that had occurred. They were willing to bargain for boring. Just get through school. Don't get weird again. They'd also lowered their expectations. It was a fragile yet workable ceasefire. When I came home and told my mom a boy in my math class had asked me to the senior prom, she simply set aside her exhausted confusion and let herself get a little excited about getting me a dress. Barth Monk was in my calculus class. If ever there was a platonic form of nerd, someone would make a glorious statue of Barth. He had the extra thick glasses that made his eyes look bigger, and thick wavy hair he parted on the side. He had acne under his movie theater manager mustache. He wore Izod shirts tucked into his pleated dockers and penny loafers with real pennies in them. He was the only person at school unaware of my reputation because nobody talked to him, so he was nice to me. Of course, I agreed to go to the prom with Barth. Mom and I started off at one of those stores in small towns that specialize in prom dresses and evening wear for Rotary Club soirees. 1987 was the year everybody went around looking ready for their glamour shot at the mall. It was an epic year for colors of taffeta and poofy sleeves. I refused to even try them on, but after some lengthy and contentious debates with my mother in front of the clerks centered on what everyone else would be wearing to prom, I said, fine, you asked for it. When I emerged from the dressing room looking like a homemade tissue box cozy, even my mother couldn't contain her laughter. You like it? I said, how about in coral? Perhaps the sleeves could be a little bigger. She relented. Okay, let's go to Nordstrom's. We drove to an actual department store. They had prom dresses too, but we now both understood that I could not wear what the other girls would be wearing. Neither of us knew why, but we agreed I could not pull it off. We found what we were looking for on the sales rack in the cocktail dresses section. The dress was black and backless, with long sleeves and a collared neck. It had a large sequin sash in front and was slid up the back of the skirt. It accentuated and flattered my adult curves. It was Alexis Carrington from Dynasty rather than Mallory from Family Ties. In retrospect, I was wearing drag. It's the only way I could pull off female. And the only drag that suited me was slutty bitch. It was the perfect dress for that. My mother was thrilled and thought I looked classy. So that's my, I don't know. I don't know if I have exhausted my time, but I could read the second story.
Yeah.
You better read that second story.
So the second story is when I had to come out to my mother as trans. And so, are you going to stop dressing like a gas station attendant now? This wasn't the first time my mother had asked me that. We'd been fighting about my appearance since the 70s, a decade that still employed gas station attendants. I thought the point of this was for you to blend in now, she said. What do you think I'm going to wear now? Did you think I would start dressing like Dad? Do you see any Dockers and golf shirts around you? I asked. You don't have to wear golf shirts, but you could look normal. I just thought you could look clean now that you're going to Harvard. You know, just blend a little. Where do you blend, Ma? Out to lunch in Palm Springs? Seriously, where do you and Dad blend? I replied. We were getting louder. People at the Mexican fusion restaurant were staring. We paid our bill and spilled onto Mass Ave. We were yelling now. My mother was hurling the word blend at me like it was a spell. And she was a well-dressed Disney villainess, conjuring the dark magic of suburbs everywhere to permanently fuse a light blue Oxford button-up to my skin. She was so mad she didn't even care that the muggles in Cambridge could see the green laser beam shooting from her eyes. At 41, I still could do nothing to stem the shame of knowing that I was a cliche. An overprivileged, underachieving, urban queer with all the fashion that implies. But I'd gotten into Harvard, which I did solely to impress my parents and avoid this ongoing conflict. My best defense in the moment was, they let me in because I'm weird, Ma. People think I'm cool. What people? She asked. She did have a point. Earlier that day, my mother and I were sitting in my small room in Brookline. She was visiting during my second semester at Harvard Divinity School. Part of her still didn't believe I'd gotten in, so she seemed relieved that people at school recognized me. There was an atmosphere of giddiness and trepidation around us, as if Harvard might call any second to tell us they'd discover their error and would appreciate it if we left quietly. I'd warned my mother over the phone that I had something to tell her. We'd gone to breakfast at the Busy Bee Cafe across the street, where the waitresses were all over 50, had real Boston accents, and wore brightly colored running shoes. Our waitress was just telling Mom what a nice boy I was when I started to fall apart over my eggs, so we went back to my room. You know, I've always been sort of masculine, pretty awkward as a girl. I was sitting by the window, staring at my hands, starting to tear up. Yes, her voice firm, letting me know she was ready. I'd been having this conversation with my mother in my head for weeks, not caring that passing strangers could see my lips moving. But the well-crafted, assertive essay I perfected during this exercise fell out of my mouth as a stuttering monologue about our long history of fighting about my clothes. Remember when we had to go shopping for a prom dress for me, and even you thought I looked ridiculous? Remember how attached I was to that army fatigue jacket in junior high? I don't know where I was going with this preface, but my mom figured it out. I was about to remind her she'd always suggested a tunic as a unisex option for formal wear, but I thought I looked terrible in tunics when she stopped me. You want to do what Benny did? Benny, my best friend back in Minneapolis, had started taking testosterone to become a man a couple years before this. Yes, was all I could get out. I couldn't look at her. She sighed. Oh, thank God. I thought you were going to tell me something important. I stopped crying and stared at her. In the silence that followed, my eyebrows affected befuddlement, then anger, and then I started laughing. So did my mom. We both laughed that laugh of venting lifelong mutual anxiety that only the two of us share. It went on for quite some time. Well, you always did suck at being a girl, she offered in lieu of some time-consuming, gratuitous gesture of sentimentality. Should we go do your laundry now? That's my second coming out story.
Yes, thank you, Ty.
Thank you.
Yes, so beautiful. And I just love the humor. So I apologize for being unmuted while I was vocally enjoying myself listening to your work.
I will say it's really odd if you're trying to tell jokes to say it when there's no noise.
Yeah, I was just trying to give you a sense of timing. Yeah. Oh, so amazing. Roy, are you ready to share your work?
I don't think I'm ready after Ty's reading. That was amazing, Ty.
So good.
Oh
So
my
good.
goodness. It's interesting that, thank you so much for putting this together, Sherry and Lisa and Quatrefoil, for inviting me. I think this is the second time I do something with Quatrefoil. And I think that it's such a significant and important space. But I think that, Ty, some of the stuff that you said, it's really interesting because for me, I know that we're gonna get more into this like in the Q&A part, but me basically identifying myself as non-binary, I can already see this as a second coming out that's gonna happen with my family. So thank you so much for doing that. I was talking to Lisa yesterday, I think. I'm always talking to Lisa. I think that even when I don't contact them, I'm always talking to Lisa. But Lisa made a comment yesterday, I think, and it was about the fact that, us being already like 30 plus, that we've already become elders. And that idea got stuck with me because I've been thinking about not just about queer and trans survival, right? But about the fact that, for me at least, I grew up in Miami, where the idea of being queer and trans, being 30 plus, was just not a real thing. My elders were 18, 19-year-olds. And so I think about that often, and this is gonna be the poems I'm gonna read tonight are in the spirit of not just our elders, but thinking about how for many of us, our elders were in fact, other children. Queerodactyl, and this is part of a series. There's 13 poems in the book, Catrachos, and all you have to know is that there are several queerodactyls. There is an asteroid called Dude Steroid that wants to sort of like break up this party that's happening here. And then there's Mama Deerodactyl, like Mama Dearest, and she does really interesting things in this book. Queerodactyl. We vogued in graveyards, headstones big as Daddy's factory plant, Playboy magazines littered under the bathroom sink, sour cream drip drops on our mustaches. No one knew whose mom had charred the tortillas. We scrape marmoleum floors with our heels. Geometry went defunct, went apparel, berserk, bull in jeans, torero. Our mothers near their lips to our dirty claws as we sway them in men's holy, unshaven catastrophes. Prayers so lit, you think they went out to find a job. We no longer search for food on the ground or in the sky. New border by its shame. plunge our bodies into it, the way a father's hand might twist, tighten, rip a rosary. Have we ever told you what else we felt when the earth's doors betrayed authority? When wind unfurled wig, crystal beads, the sacrament in our hands? Had mercy shown up as mercy, we might have stopped the idealized throttle, picked our hips from the humid ground, fashioned ourselves a new savior. So that's what the Queerdactyl poem that opens the collection. Thank you. And yeah, I don't know if I want, yeah, we're gonna talk more about this today. The next poem I want to read is a poem that obviously, in thinking about elders, there's a line that I have in another poem that is, it says, ghosts, on the contrary, ghosts do aspire to bring the living to trial. And I think about that, right? The undone work of ghosts. If some of you have seen the movie Coco, it's such a beautiful film about how the dead, they're not done with their business. And so this poem was inspired by the Orlando massacre that happened in the summer of 2016. But we lost so many of our family members, and this, Orlando being so close to Miami, it hit very hard. I was already living here in Minnesota, so it's about what happens, not just in Orlando, but also to the people here in Minnesota. Restored mural for Orlando. Seconds before the shooter sprays bullets on my brothers and sisters' bodies, the DJ stops the record from spinning, and I am interested in that brief dazzle of pink light, how it spreads on iron press shirts until they turn purple, how a gun is a heart that has forgotten to sing. The rapture in a stranger's eyes, a candid take on resurrection. You visit Orlando to fantasize about the childhood you didn't have. Even though I grew up in Florida, the trip was a luxury because I grew up poor. And when I finally could afford it, I took my parents to Universal Studios. This is the first time I ever saw my mother get on a roller coaster because she's always been ashamed of her weight. And we ended up buying a timeshare by mistake. Not really by mistake, but by my illusion that my parents worked themselves sick in the US, so they needed vacations. And the debt collectors still call us after all these years to remind us of the Great Recession, where my mother lost her job and my father had to go into early retirement. Our mothers gave us names so we would know what goes at the head of a tombstone. Brayer presses, and our duty is to feel the isolation that any alignment of letters can trigger when they're carved out of grief, since most of us were born or bloomed out of sorrow, like swans always bent on pond water or unpaid bills, as though we were fishing for clues about our graves or where we'll stop to mislay our moisture on others' necks. And just the night before, I went out for drag night at Lush with 4 other poets. One reason to escape my schedule and relive my adolescence. I'm afraid of attending places that celebrate our bodies because that's also where our bodies have been canceled. When you're brown and gay, you're always dying twice. I got to see 13 performances by amateurs, a few special guests, one queen who happened to make a stop in Minneapolis. She's a national sensation. And the MC sang a raspy but virtuosic version of When You're Good to Mama. And the boys and the girls and the femmes lined up with their dollar bills, which the queen scarfed down with their perfect bosoms and their teeth. And I turned to the Nez and I said, the whole performance reminded me of receiving communion as a child. How for me, a church is a roof that's always collapsing. Though I might have been talking about lovers paying their condolences, so often we forget that what kills us now once believed in our survival. That a pistol and a rifle pulled apart can be the shape of your arms as you pull your lover closer. That when his teeth are black, it means you picked the right bottle of Sauvignon. That in our video games, one can ride a bullet toward eternity. My partner is asked to sing at the vigil in Lauren Park. His choir has commissioned an hour-long piece inspired by David Levithan's Two Boys Kissing, in which a pair of teenagers participate in a kissing marathon to set a new Guinness World Record. A Greek chorus of souls who won't be vanquished by the epidemic find comfort narrating the tragic but true events. How can I sing for an entire hour about that much grief without breaking down during the performance? My partner asks me as I scroll through the news. On the phone, my mother says the shooter's hatred sprung from watching two men kiss in Bayside Marketplace in the heart of Miami. And I am imagining how my mother might never approve of me pressing my lips against another man's without that man being my father or a mistranslation of him. Because even our fathers have prayed at least once for us to be gone. No eres mi hijo maricón. In Bayside, I held an old lover's hand before I moved away to college. The moon upon the water like a wound that wouldn't heal. And he dumped me soon after, said he couldn't bear the pain of me parting, which when you're older, you rank as necessary pain that train you when to open up and shut like a house with only hurricanes moving through it, or hasty promises. Orlando like an orange, now green with mold, but still edible for some. The evening of the shootings after dinner with friends who grieve by not dying, I come home to touch my partner's sweltering body. A humid June evening without AC in Minnesota, far from the carnage, but still so close to feel it. And we produce baby noises, and for witness, and for hope, as we give shape to the carefree child of vulnerability that runs between us every evening, safe, but somehow lost. Until my lover falls asleep and I stay awake out of need and continue to whisper their names as they're added to the list like faces from a river of baptism. I forgive the earth for not turning its neck further, for not allowing those pink lights to keep flashing, for the cackles to remain intact no matter how boisterous. In those seconds when their skin has never been so bright, so self-assured, the bartender is shaking a piña colada, goosebumps flower on someone's arms. The streets are humming from the light. A pair of lovers walks in, another eagerly awaits the last call of the evening. It would seem the record wants to keep spinning while we wipe their blood from their floor. For them, we learn to touch again. For them, we walk home and we are safe. Then I'm going to read one last poem. Again, thinking about ancestors, and this one for I love Jane Fonda. You know, that's an angry woman I'll always love. And so she and Farrah Fawcett make cameos in this poem. Queerdactyl. Spandex leggings authenticating my anaerobic exit strategies. Crotch but a bumper sticker in a heretofore fleeting Waterloo. Crunk repentance. I spend our doom alphabet soup like Jane Fonda's anti-war legs in calisthenic videos. My zenith of a hair, a brown wannabe faucet, Mino toucan, pubic papa. He who so feeds on an entire corpus and still starves, helms the colloquium outside the bathroom of transubstantiation. Tonight, a vastly archived Nietzschean nighttime, I anal bleach my Humpty Dumpty stigmatas. Boys conch with crimson Hollywood carpets that disentangle from their cavities, accustoming their catwalks upon the blood clots of their mamacitas. Like a mythic infantry, the thirsty roaches begin to leather flock. I plie before the gas cloud lifting jumbo leaves. At twilight, as twilight uncrowns the shade, I howl effluvium, switchblade hue to hue. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, Roy. Let me just say, I am so here for all of this magic. Every single bit. Junauda, I don't think we're ready, but we're ready. 2020, that's all.
2020. I like how you ended at that. Gosh, y'all are so juicy. Roy and Ty, y'all are so damn juicy. And like, y'all juices just let me like slide up into this space just like so beautifully and smoothly. I really wish I could be there hugging y'all. Y'all both are like very huggable people. So it feels kind of like, oh, I don't get to like hug on them and breathe on them and like, you know, all of that good stuff. And, but I do feel like we're still so connected because everything y'all shared, like I could so relate to. Ty, me and my mom, oh Lord, the clothes stuff. She, you know what she said to me recently? She was like, you know what now, Junauda? Now you're dressed the way I always wanted you to dress, you know? And I was like, bro, like it never feels like a compliment. Even when she's complimenting me, it always feels like she's joking me. And Roy, you're talking about the Pulse experience. It's connected to me too, because actually those were the weeks that me and my wife fell in love. And so like, you know, thinking about ancestral energy and queer ancestral energy, I think about that a lot in my lineage. You know, I came out later in life. And I think like there's still such a like kind of like thus like kind of youthful way to my queerness, you know, because I still feel like I wish I was 19 and 20, like with rainbow flags and totally bugging out at Pride and making out with people like crazy, but I just didn't have that fearlessness then. So like anyways, all these stories, like, you know, stories around young queerness and, you know, finding and shaping ourselves, you know, is always so you know, it's kind of like a place in myself that I grieve. And also I'm just so grateful. Thank you, Roy. I appreciate that, baby. So I'm sharing from my book, The Stars and the Blackness Between Them. And I think this is like another way for me to kind of like do some requiting around like my youthful queerness. Because so much of this book is like just exploring the queerness of these Black girls in Minneapolis, in Trinidad. My mom is from Trinidad. So yeah, so I do feel like, you know, the space of ancestors and elders and queer holding is so important. And thank you so much, Claude and Lisa and Sherry, for, you know, like creating this space to hold that, especially during coming out week, especially when we don't get to be in the club sweating up on each other, grinding and shit. Like this is what we got. We got Zoom, and I'll take it. So I'm gonna read a scene from the book. So the book is about these two Black girls, one from Trinidad who like gets discovered with her like, you know, church gay lover, and she goes up to live with her Black American dad, and, you know, ends up befriending this other young woman named Mabel, a Black girl from Minneapolis. And, you know, they begin a little love story, and there's way more to it. There's a lot of astrology in it. There's all kinds of things, but I'm gonna read a section that actually talks about Whitney Houston, who is a very central ancestor to this book. Are y'all hearing me okay? Because my service was going kind of weird. Okay, cool. You know, you gotta check in with these people. All right, let me begin. This is from Mabel, who's 16 years old, by the way. I'm trying to sleep and I can't sleep. My belly hurts and my hips too. All I can do is lie in bed and think of young Whitney Houston from the 80s. I have her album Whitney next to my bed. I found it at the thrift store last week when I was there with my mama, and I've been sleeping next to Whitney every night ever since. My mom thinks it's cute since Whitney was her idol growing up, and she was inspired by her singing and style and stuff. But I feel like Whitney and I are connected in a special way for some reason. I have loved her since I was a kid when my mom and I would play her greatest hits and dance to I Wanna Dance with Somebody. At the part when Whitney says, "Don't you want to dance? Say you want to dance. Don't you want to dance?" Mama would pull my dad in. He would do his reliable and raggedy two-step, thinking he is killing the game, and she would be in her intricate Afro-modern hip-hop choreography, which is a lot of shoulder shimmying, lyric dancing, and old lady twerking. My mom can dance, though, for real, and she could always get my dad to just let go and be goofy. Anyway, I'm up, staring at my ceiling in my memories and my feels as usual, listening to my quiet storm mix, as my dad calls it. It's all emo and soft music. Soon, I'm thinking of Whitney and her fine self from back in the day again. She just had a lot of layers to her, which is a thing I like in people like Ursa and Jazzy. Even Terrell has layers. I like that sometimes Whitney was graceful and poised like a church lady, but she was really kind of wild and cray and straight hood too. I'm like that. I got a lot of layers, but I think other kids think I'm just this whatever tomboy Black girl, but who always reading and playing ball or working out or something. I basically fit in, which is okay, but sometimes I wish I felt comfortable to put more of my layers out there. If I'm honest, part of my renewed curiosity is because recently I found out Whitney Houston fell in love with this other girl, Robin, when she was in her teens and working a summer job in New Jersey. I was just looking stuff up online and found some things about her rumored romance with her basketball player best friend, Robin. I don't know, but it just seems cool to know that she had this connection with this other girl and that the other girl was a beautiful basketball star and Whitney fell for her butt, called her the sister she never had. I think I felt that way before with Ursa, my bestie, but I felt that somewhat in another kind of weird way with Jada, this girl from math. I read that when Whitney hit it big, Robin was her for real ride or die, that she became Whitney's assistant and her confidant and always had her back, for real, for real. They shared a huge apartment together that was bad and beautiful and was living that good life together. When I listened to I Want to Dance with Somebody after reading more about their connection, I imagine Whitney and Robin slow dancing in an icy and lit penthouse in the 80s, and it's all back in the day fresh. A world of windows, looking over the city, lights and skyscrapers, black and white everything, with leather couches, a big sound system with mad tapes and CDs, glass tables and neon chandelier. Old school, tasteful. They are two Black girls slow dancing, teen twin flames who loved each other. inseparable. I feel it. Anyway, some people deny it. But when I look at pictures of young Robin and Whitney and how they are smiling and close, a part of me thinks it's true. I just do. I can totally see why Whitney loved her. She is cool and smooth, more swag than any of these cheesy Jerry curl dudes probably trying to push up on her. I also read that one time Robin also maybe whooped Bobby Brown's butt. I want to be like that. Smooth like Robin, just a tender thug who Whitney would love. Maybe Robin was her true love. I wish she could have stayed with her if that's what she wanted, and they'd be in love forever. Maybe the world would have loved her if she was queer. I would have, no doubt. Whitney was an angel, and what if Robin could have been her bodyguard? Why did that basic white boy, Kevin Costner, with no swag, have to save her? It should have been Robin's cool self. Ain't Black women always saving everything anyway? Why can't we save Whitney? So that's a little sun. That's a little sun. Okay. Yeah, so I think like the sacredness of like, you know, coming out and like, you know, this time of reflecting on these elders and ancestors, you know, like you're speaking to so strongly, Roy and Ty, I think is like, yeah, like there's a lot of us who didn't even get to know who our ancestors and elders were who were queer because of the times that they were around. And I think like, yeah, like there's a lot of, I think like holding in my work around the queer people in my, you know, lineage, you know, in my family, elders and ancestors, as well as all of these like figures who, you know, were in pop culture, but I didn't get to know them in that way. So yes.
Yeah.
Okay. How much time I got, Lisa? Were you clocking me?
I was. You've got.
Are you gonna? Mhm.
Oh, great.
I'm sorry.
7
Seven. Oh shit. Okay. Cool. Okay. So I'm gonna read another thing from this same chapter. So this is this same character about to experience her first Black, like, oh, so her favorite band is this band called Black Lovers, and her parents are taking her to First Avenue and like, you know, to see her favorite band. So this is her experience. The energy of the show was very intense for me. All I could do was take in all the fly people. Okay, she like has this like cute little situationship. I'll explain. I'll keep on. Okay. All I could do was take in all the fly people, their different looks and colors. They were beautiful. I had never experienced that ever before. My parents let me wander into the ocean of audience and be free of them, as long as I stayed close to the stage or their bougie district and kept my phone handy. I walked around and tried to be low key and blend in, but in that space, part of me wished I had let myself let loose and pick an edgier outfit. I said excuse me about 11 times and twisted my body through the crowd until I was standing real close to the front, right on the edge of the stage. I wanted to see the band as close as I could. The wait seemed forever to come out, but there was a DJ playing some bops to keep the crowd ready. When the band got on the stage, I was only a couple feet away from Queen. They were smaller than I thought they would be, but they was also everything else, more beautiful and dope, and I couldn't stop looking at them. The whole audience seemed to love and want Queen. I mean, my whole body was vibrating. They was all in the zone, and Queen didn't seem to notice us at all, except for between songs when they would talk and tell little stories in their deep speaking voice. Otherwise, they would let their guitar talk and harmonize their singing alongside it. Their voice made me feel like they cared about me. I know that's weird, but that's the only way I can explain the way it feels when I listen to them. Moaning their lyrics behind the bass line, the whole band was going hard and hitting that beat. I felt every note in my gut really underground in me. I'm not gonna lie, I was also feeling super awkward because I didn't even know if I knew how to dance at first. But then this girl next to me out of nowhere starts to groove with me. I still remember when she got on. She was so magically pretty. She was looking witchy with a lavender colored afro and white boots and a necklace of mandarin colored flowers. I started dancing back before I could even think about it. She was real smooth with her movements, twirling around me and dropping it low like bow. I was like, damn. I did a helpless version of my dad's two-step. And to my surprise, she seemed impressed. She soul clapped at me even, like I was killing it. She smiled and I just kept doing my thing, grinning back at her. And I don't know why I still remember this, but she smelled good too, like cocoa butter, jasmine, and a little alcohol on her breath, even though there was an X on her hand like mine. All of a sudden, a crew of her friends came back with drinks, and she smiled at me and then floated away among them. and I got pushed farther back. It made me feel a little disappointed, but I get it. Those were her homies. But for some silly reason, I had wished we could have danced all night together to Black Lovers, and I could have maybe even known her name. Next thing I know, I hear a familiar voice. Ooh, Mabel, they is so fresh. I had to get on this dance floor and do my thing, baby. And there was my mama behind me, shimmying an old lady twerking her heart out to the music. We played Black Lovers on the ride home, and I was still buzzing from their weirdness and freeness and Blackness. I tried to relive all I saw on the stage that night. The bass player, Black Rose, who is tall and dark with a pretty smile and pink fade, and is jumping up and dancing on the stage. Black Dahlia, their drummer from Senegal, who was raised in New Orleans, who moved between every kind of rhythm with congas, wind chimes to her drum kit to a djembe. And then the keys player, Black Iris, and her glittery periwinkle dreadlocks past her fat, fine butt, wearing a mint green wedding dress, her eyes closed as she did rhythms on her beat machine. And of course, my favorite, Queen Asante-Wa, and their emotional voice. She a butch, right? My dad said from the front seat, promptly killing my vibe. She could sing her ass off. That falsetto was a young prince in his hay. Ooh, and she could play too, real good, like Jimmy on that guitar. I'm glad we went, ladies. The way he said she and her really annoyed me, like he knew them or understood something about them because of how they rocked their hair or clothes. Why don't you just enjoy the music, Dad? Why the first thing you wonder about them is if they butch? And they don't go by she. I blurted out, feeling heat in my face. Then both me and my dad got quiet. Saquon, the singer Queen Asante-Wa, goes by they, baby, my mama said. But she didn't stop there. And ooh, that little cutie queen is a fine little tenderoni. I can see why all y'all kids be acting wild behind them, she said, revealing cougar feelings about Queen Asante-Wa that nobody was wondering about. Right. They, not she. My bad. He looked at me in the rearview mirror, but I don't think he noticed me rolling my eyes. They used to call him Butcher Stud back in the day. I wasn't trying to be mean. I did enjoy the show though. I said that, I liked it. I just kept rolling my eyes at his fumbling. Whatever. There are still butches or studs, but there are they and thems and more too. Mom put her hand on Dad's. This indigo generation is next level. It took me a while to pick up on it, but I get it better now. I know you wasn't trying to be insensitive, Kwam, but just be mindful, okay, honey? They go by them and they. After my mom broke it down in her own way, my dad and I both stayed quiet the rest of the drive. I felt like I wanted to cry for some reason, and a couple tears came down and I wiped them slow, so no one would notice and I feel even more dumb, since I was grateful I got to go. My mom turned up the volume, and as Queen's voice filled up the car, I looked at our city glitter by. So there's that. Do I have time, Lisa, for a poem? And it's cool if I don't.
I think you have time for a poem. I would be a fool to deny the public a poem from Junauda Petrus-Nasah.
Yeah. Well, it's Libra season. So as I shared, this poem has like an astrology poem for each sign. Feel free to share your astrological sign in the chat if you want to like argue about some shit real quick. And I'll read the Libra poem because yeah, it's Libra season, y'all. So we gotta get cute. We gotta like, snuggle up on ourselves, put on shea butter, extra long and juicy. Okay, Libra season. The leaves were raked up by an older cousin for us to dive into, and the impact was crunchy yet soft somehow. She gathered the splendor of changing leaves, rustling breeze, and flamboyant descents to afterlife, and let us look at the sky from the softness. The expressions of love are a labor of love. Hands at harmony with the heart reminds us to be slow, decadent, working and toiling yields for balance, for pleasure, and luxuriating in it. She played a love supreme on the turntable to set the mood for indulgence. And she rubbed the feet of the queen of the house, seeing the daily attempts to break her back in her eyes and walk. She brings her tea with extra sweetened condensed milk to coat her belly, and then she picks her afro out so her head feels free. A radical adornment of care, Auntie is a lover who allowed the pots to simmer and set in flavors, passed down from tired hands whose names she don't remember and never knew. Just the love is what she tastes, and the love is what remains. Thank you, everybody. Love you all.
Hey, I wonder if everyone's willing to unmute for just a moment so we can make some noise for these amazing writers. Can we do that? That was awesome. That was just beautiful, and it was all of it is just so healing for this moment in time. I just want to say one thing: if we can just kind of like pull our energies together and our hearts together, because young people are coming out this week, and they're being kicked out of their houses still, and young love is being torn apart because families are not willing to accept it, and things like that. So anyway, this has been heavy on my heart today for personal reasons, but this reading and hearing your work is just so uplifting to me. So thank you so much. Thank you so much. We have a couple of questions for the readers, and the chat is open. So if anyone has a question that you like to ask, please go ahead and write your question in the chat. Lisa, was there anything else you wanted to mention or say?
Well, I wanted to say that I'm sorely out of practice, everyone, and I didn't even mention Hennepin County Library. I don't believe I did that yet, and I just want to say a great thank you to them for their support of this event and the work that they've done throughout the year and the years to date in terms of supporting queer literature and queer authors. So shout out to Hennepin County Library, and I know we have Amanda on the call here, so just in interest of embarrassing her, I wanted to say, hey Amanda, we see you and we love you and we appreciate you for being here.
Yay, Amanda. Thank you so much. Okay, great, thank you. So yeah, feel free to throw your questions in the chat, and the authors can all ask each other questions in a moment as well. But just to get us started, I have just kind of like a broad question. I'm trying to figure out which one I want to ask first. Okay, how about I start with, is there a question you were hoping to answer in your work that you're still grappling with and still trying to answer? You could take a moment. It feels like your work is providing some answers for me, so.
Yeah, no. Hi, were you ready to go? Or are you still thinking? What's the thing I grapple with my work? I think it's like, so are you talking about like content-wise? Or are you talking about approach-wise? Or
Anything.
I think for me, I think part of it is like allowing myself to surrender to the process and surrender to the ways that art because I mean, I think the older I get into my art, it really is spiritual work. Like it's just ritual and spiritual work. Like I even like read things I've wrote and I'm like, oh, like that really was a thing that I sometimes don't remember writing, you know? And I think like even, you know, just the way that art, I don't know, I just feel like art is just so beautifully intuitive as it moves through us. And I think a lot of what I'm trying to do is like, you know, not obstruct it from moving through me through getting in my head or getting caught up in, you know, whether what I have to write is good or important. So yeah, so I think for me, that's been like, you know, just seeing how sacred and like, you know, intuitive the work moves through me, like even what all three of us read, like, I just felt like, yeah, like, just like, I don't know, just like the beauty of like, you know, the ritual of all of us, you know, like even these spaces that I think really do sort of oversimplify the existence of artistry, you know, because like we don't get to like be all in ritual in these like deep nurturing ways that are respected. Like I just love that even with the way y'all curated it, like it seemed like sacredly, divinely connected. So I feel like those are my things. Like and also just writing, I mean, I write really weird shit and I'm like just kind of be like, yeah, like I write weird shit and I'm like getting more fearless and bold and getting weirder. So I grapple with my weirdness.
I love it. Thank
How
you.
about you, Ty, Roy, and y'all ready?
Hey, Sherry, will you will you actually just repeat the question just because I don't
Sure.
answer the wrong question and sound like a jerk?
I don't think there's such a thing as, so whatever hits you, triggers you, feel free. So I was asking, is there a question that you are hoping to answer in your work that you're still grappling with or still trying to answer?
Yeah.
Mhm.
If you don't mind, Roy. Anyway, I'm gonna go. I think what I'm grappling with and is one of my core, I don't know, desires to put out in the world is to make alliances between groups that have a lot in common, but not everything in common. And especially right now, it just seems so important. It seems necessary. And for me, and in my work, like I said before, I'm 50, and I had my first girlfriend when I was 15. So that's 35 years of being out and queer. And so, and I have one of my editors is just a lovely friend of mine from grad school, and she's 15 years younger. She's in her mid 30s. She's millennial, and she she was one of the editors of the book that I wrote, and she's like, Ty, you can't talk like this. You sound irrelevant and old, and you got to change your language or explain yourself. You can't. So, I can't what I have been grappling with lately, I actually just wrote an article about it, about the generational differences in identity and what there's no dyke bars anymore. So how does the younger generation, there's still gay bars, but there's no dyke bars. So how does the younger generation of sort of I guess all the queers that don't want to go to gay bars, let's just categorize it like that, where do they find each other? Do their identities, because there's so many now, where do they find their clans, their communities, and how can the acronym LGBT never really got along, but I feel like in the 80s and the 90s, because of Reagan and the AIDS crisis, that we all kind of had to step up and like each other, sort of. And for the activism that was going on in the 80s and 90s, primarily surrounding AIDS, ACT UP, Queer Nation, that kind of stuff. And so I remember a time that looks a lot like the time, the fears that we have right now, as far as, with the Amy Coney Barrett and everything. So how do we, what I'm still grappling with is, how do we make intergenerational, how do we make alliances with all of the intersecting marginalization that we're all experiencing right now? So so I went back and changed a bunch of things that maybe I was sounding like an old turd about.
Thank you. I'm a 50-year-old Gen Xer also, so I get that generational thing, because we're like scrunched in the middle, and we're kind of, I don't know, middle child.
Yeah.
Yeah. Roy?
Yeah, I was gonna say something very similar to what Ty said at the beginning in terms of connection. I think for me, this, being a Honduran queer immigrant in this country, there are so many erasures that I think happen in my culture and in my life, and I think one thing that I've always been concerned about is if this is the first book that a person gets to read from someone in Honduras, right? From someone born in Honduras, raised in Honduras, is this going to be like an entrance that makes them crave knowing, you know, like walking through other entrances? And I worry, I think about that. I think for me, like, you know, in a country that has so much death, where extortion is huge, for instance, where, you know, me being in the middle of an MFA program here in Minnesota, you know, learning how to teach, you know, kids from farms and whatnot. I get these, you know, one day I get these random messages from my family in Honduras. They're freaking out. They're wondering where I am because apparently they had been contacted by a group of people saying that they were holding me hostage in Mexico. And I think about that a lot, like the dissonance, right, of being in a space that is relatively safer than it would be for a queer trans person, you know, in Honduras. I think about that a lot. And I think about what do I carry with me, you know, what chips, you know, do I have on my shoulder and why are they there? And I think that your question made me think about that. Like, how am I allowing people to enter this region, you know, and also how am I allowing myself to remind myself that this, you know, I don't have to carry every single burden, and that I should connect with the people that are going to help me work towards the next project.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Do you all have questions for each other at this point?
Yeah,
Otherwise,
Ty,
I can
I
do
want
another one.
to ask Ty, since, you know, I've known you for a long time. I got a question for you too, Roy. So, you know, you ain't in the hot seat now, but you in the hot seat eventually. Just, you know, be ready. But yeah, Ty, like, what's your experience in writing a memoir and like having your first book be a personal account of your work? Yeah, just wonder, because it's also very new, your book.
Thanks, Junauda. I don't have any experience writing except most of my writing experience is academic, and I was pretty good at that, but I couldn't ever go further because I made too many jokes in my academic papers, and I just didn't find anything that fascinating that I would spend that amount of time to get my PhD. Also, I just have a problematic relationship with academia. But I started writing this memoir because just on a blog that I just created because I needed an intellectual outlet when I was bartending, and I just got home from Harvard, and bartending is really fun, but I just needed something to do in my spare time. Because I wanted to tell the story of the bar that I opened, Pie, in 2007. Because that's a really good story. And so I started telling it in blog form and writing other articles just for myself. Like 4 people read that blog. But, and then, Katrina bought me a writing class, and I'd never taken a writing class, creative writing. And I started the whole process over and lengthened it into a book. And it was an amazing experience. The whole thing, like now it's been 4.5 years of working on this book. And it was therapeutic, it was cathartic. All that I'm sort of an oral storyteller by nature. And so trying to write down those stories that I've told 100 times at cocktail parties, but in a form that I think will be interesting in writing, like trying to put yourself back in time to try to connect with that person that was feeling those things at that time. You probably know how to do that really well, but it was really challenging for me and interesting. So, this has been a really amazing experience. So,
Nice.
Should I ask my question for Roy, or do one of y'all want to ask me a question or ask each other a question? Because we can pass it around. So who wants to
Yeah, anybody want to jump in? Otherwise, I have one, and Junauda, you can certainly ask yours.
I have a million questions, but I wanted to ask you, Junauda, I think that your book is so, it's not even that it's important, it's so necessary. And I was wondering, how did you stumble upon this story? Like, what conditions were happening in your life or in your writing life that you ended up landing in this, on this story?
Yeah, that's a good question. I feel like I always get my story epiphanies in the shower. Does anybody have like like a certain thing that and I don't know why that happens, and I don't know if now it happens because it's been happening, but like I remember literally the apartment I was living in. I won't even say who was my land dyke because I don't want to call them out, but Lisa will probably know who I'm talking about. And I just was like, there's a person on death row and there's a kid who's really sick. They're both Black, and their humanity is experienced via their mortality in these very different ways, but also very in conversation around Blackness. So that was like literally the like thumbprint or thumbnail or whatever they call it. And, over time, I think like at that time I was, doing work with the Heart of the Beast Theater, doing a lot of like puppet work. I just finished, writing a play that, also dealt with kind of like these young people, in love and coming of age. So it's been kind of interesting. I've been writing in the young adult space, but for the, not for on the page, but like on the stage and stuff like that. So like writing this book and like, I had a mentor, Alexis Duval, who's another tremendous Black queer, writer. She really encouraged me. She's like, you want to write you a gay book. That's how she talks. She's from Harlem. You want to write you a gay book. And I was like, yeah, I do. Because the book wasn't initially a queer book. I think like, and this is like the conversation around coming out. Like there's so many ways that you have to constantly give yourself permission to like include queerness in all aspects of yourself, So I feel like that's the thing I always like name is that like, Alexis was really the one to like really push me into that like space of writing a book that was queer. And it became so, like there's intergenerational queerness that happens in the book. There's like diasporic queerness that happens in the book. Which I feel like some of the stuff that, like at least, specifically where you're talking around, like, just coming from cultures where obviously there's always queerness and gayness in our cultures, but like a lot of our generation is kind of the one who gets to live it in a different dynamic, So I think like for me, like imagining not just queerness, in my generation, but also queerness in other generations and other times and the lineages and spaces that I come from geographically. So that's where, the book really like blossomed from those spaces. And also astrology. I also like, have been doing a lot of stuff around astrology and around like, I write often like, so in this book and also in the play that I wrote, there is like a person who's incarcerated, which, for me, is just like inclusive of the geographies I write on. Like that like, that there's all kinds of bodies, particularly, Black and brown bodies, trans bodies, queer bodies that are incarcerated and, and BIPOC bodies, Black bodies, so like, just like those spaces I feel like factor importantly, within my work. So yes, Thank you, Roy, for thinking my work is important, friend.
I did have a question. As long as we're focusing on Junauda, I will have I'm focusing. I'm focused on. But so I've had your book for a while, and I just started reading it the last couple of days. And I don't know if you saw in the comments, but the chapter you read today, you already read it to me today because I could hear your voice while I was reading it. But I was wondering, and this is more of a party question, I guess. Did you split because I don't know how to write fiction. I'm going to maybe try to figure it out someday. But did you split yourself into two characters? Because I can feel you in both main characters.
I didn't do that intentionally. And I feel like it's a thing that I ponder because it wasn't an intentional thing. And I think like all of the characters, there's ways that I relate to them for sure, and I think like, this book has been out a year, I've been writing it, I was writing it for 3 years or 4 years before that. So like, there's a lot that I'm getting to learn about these characters still in the ways that they are connected to me. But certainly when I was writing it, it was just kind of like, I literally, I don't know. And it's weird because what you asked, Ty, is like, I think that's what I thought a lot of novelist or fiction writing was just like, oh, you kind of like utilize parts of yourself. But like, I really will say like when I was writing, I literally felt like these spirits were like, no, this is my story. Like I'd be up in the morning, like just crying, like writing like, girl, that happened to you. Oh my God. Like, just like there's ways that like these characters, like children, like they came like, I'm quoting Sweet Honey in the Rock. It came through me, but it's not of me. It's like, they literally, are characters I learned from, so yeah. But I mean, of course I feel like, I feel good that you feel as a person who knows me, like reading the book. And I think a lot of my friends like feel me all up in it. But also feel, other characters as well, or, this other thing experience as well.
Yeah, I wasn't trying to diminish anything.
No, you wasn't diminishing anything. But I was wondering, can we jump on Roy? Can we jump on Roy?
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Roy, I wanted to ask you about your process as a poet because I've loved your fucking poetry for a long time. And of course, you done blewed up. We respect that. You still show us love, but you done blewed up. But I really just feel like, as a, just curious about your process as a poet and like, how, I just feel like there's so many sort of realms that your space goes into. Anyway, so I just am just curious about your process as a poet and like how you, compile your poetry as well as like compile collections, so that's my question for you.
Yeah, no, thank you for asking that, Junauda. And I think the answer to everything in my life should be, wet ass pussy. And the reason why I say that is because I was thinking today about, floodgates. How do we get ourselves in this, in this sort of space where the imagination is just, relentlessly doing its own, work, right? And like you said, Junauda, there's a metaphor that I use a lot when I talk about my process, which is, it's such a white metaphor, I feel, and I've never seen it in person, but curling. Curling to me is so interesting, but when I think about this idea, right, of like shaving that ice, right, where you're tempering, you're sort of like adjusting the conditions very slightly, right, and you're getting this thing to, do we all know what curling is? I hope that yeah, you're shaving that ice and you're doing all this extra work, right? And there's a revision that happens backstage and people don't get to see that. But how do you get it to where you want it to be? How do you get that energy, that motivation to where you want it to land? And so I think that for me is my process. I'm in a PhD program right now that, connected to what Ty was talking about. PhD programs can definitely stifle your creativity and also your creative writing. I think that thinking in theory or thinking theoretically is a form of creativity, but it's very different than being able to write about yourself, right? Being able to write about like just what you did today, without already, the editor, right, the super ego already coming in there and like trying to adjust and revise what you've already done. So for me, I think a lot about like, how do I put myself in the right conditions to get this work out there? And unfortunately, because the right conditions are almost, non-existent, then the next thing that I do is like, okay, what has been, what is it that I've written about where I feel like I still could write about, right? Where I feel like I'm not done talking about that, right? There's as crude as this may sound, but Patricia Hampel, the writer who also she just retired from the U, I studied under her, and one of the things that we were looking at someone's work, and she said the author was concerned that in writing about like a loved one's death at the beginning of the book, that somehow people will forget that this person is dead, by the time the book ends. And she said something very interesting that I think about a lot, which is, this person doesn't have to die once in the book, right? If someone's death is so traumatic for you, the way that it replays in your head, that's the same way that the consciousness of the book, right, should honor that. And so I think about the idea that how do I return to the same, places that how do I return to like the places I used to, like the waterfalls, right, TLC, and it, as I get older, what is it that I continue to learn about like the youth, something that you said today about being young and being queer. I was thinking about, of course, you can be 70 years old and you can feel young, you can feel like a young queer person because this society literally delayed your coming out process, delayed your youth, right? To the point that you might be 70 years old and you're still a child, right? Wanting to still come out after all these years. So I think for me, I think about all these questions when I'm writing. What has really sucked for me during this pandemic has been, I'm someone that has to move in so many different places. I have to work in like a coffee shop here or by the bridge here or at a park here at the library. I need that, right? Because that's how I grew up. And in this pandemic, that has been a huge, huge issue for me. And I'm also an extrovert, so.
Any questions from others?
Yeah, first of all, we got to clear this up real quick. Ty, can you please state your sun signs for the audience, please?
Okay.
This is a 2020 thing, I think, too, where whatever it is, and now we always got to know.
I did type that in earlier, but it's way up there. So I'm a Capricorn, and my birthday siblings are Dolly Parton, Janis Joplin, and Edgar Allan Poe.
All right.
Oh, son.
Dying about that combination right there. And Roy, you're going, okay, first of all, implosion, yes. Second of all, weighted, like, I love, that is such a Gemini share, a Gemini Scorpio share, to be like, let me give you my entire chart, though. We got the sun, moon, and the rising. I'm just saying.
For me, my zaddy is Walt Whitman. And weirdly enough, I also have a lot of strange energy that I share with Marilyn Monroe. I think her birthday is the day after mine, but there's a lot that I really, her personal life and her career, just very interesting stuff.
I'm so
See it.
Yes, no, that's important. Hey, Claudia, you're a Cancer. Oh, okay, birthday. That's it. No, that's
Cancer too.
It's so good.
Anyone else? Otherwise, I have another one. Maybe another one.
Roy, can I just ask you really quickly about dinosaur illusions? And because I read Queer Pterodactyl today. Queerodactyl, sorry. And I was enjoying it. It was so much, it meant something different to me when you read it to me. So tell me where the dinosaurs came from, if you could.
Yeah, that's one of the things that I kept thinking about how in the world did dinosaurs, queer dinosaurs come up here. And the simple story is I was having breakfast at Victor's Cafe, which is a Cuban cafe here in Minneapolis. It's a wonderful cafe. And afterwards, I was living with an ex of mine, the one who appears in the Orlando poem. And I don't know how we stumble upon like just saying different, like, those like dinosaur names can be so like, they can be mouthfuls. And so he ended up saying the word pteroqueer, and I responded with queerodactyl. And by the time I got home, I started thinking about the word queerodactyl and how it reminded me of like going to the club when I was young, partying and just voguing, all these kinds of things, right? Back in the days when I used to be flexible. And so I ended up writing this down. And then I literally, I had to ask myself, why am I writing about these dinosaurs, right? Like, I know I'm gonna get to a point where like people are gonna ask me like, why these dinosaurs? And so there's a poem in the book, it's called Alapata Branch Library. I started remembering that when I was younger, I would go to the library and I would literally check out, like, I think the max at the time was probably 50 books. I would check out like bags, like trash bags of like loaded with dinosaur books, because I didn't know how to speak English, right? And so somehow like the names of these dinosaurs seem so exciting to me. And I loved science. I've always loved science. And so I think that for me, the dinosaurs, their names are not just like the space of queerness, but also for me, it's the space of the child inside the library.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ashe. Ashe.
Were there folks from the audience who'd like to ask?
So if I can say hi for a second and ask a question.
Hi, Rachel.
Hi, good to see you. Good to meet the people I'm meeting. So you all started talking a little bit about, being elders and queer elders. And I brought my
queer big sister. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yes, of course.
Queer stoner auntie. That's my lane.
Big sister also totally works for me. So I brought my LGBTQ lit class from McAllister, and most of them are here. And I'm wondering, like, this is a super hard year for a lot of people. But I think, it's harder if you're younger because you don't have as much perspective, and, we've all been through some shit. So I wonder, like, what wisdom specifically you would have for...
Suddenly I got to think, thank you for using Adobe Flash Player.
So anyway, I was asking what wisdom, like if you were gonna impart some wisdom as queer big siblings to some college students right now, what would that wisdom be?
I don't know, the first thing that comes to my mind is literally the words, protect your energy. Like, I think that like there's so much going on in this time, and I think like, like it's really easy to get caught up in all of the pain and trauma because it's a lot out there. And I think there's ways that like I find that queer people are always, kind of putting themselves out there first and like, holding the line and pushing things, which I think is important. Like, I think there's I don't know, I might be biased, but I just think there's a divinity to us and a divinity to our connection to some of the shit that goes on in the world. And I think for that reason, we got to protect ourselves, protect our energy. And I think like me, myself personally, you know, have really been like, yeah, like I need to sort of honor also the fact that I do want to be an elder. A lot of us, you know, because we tend to be such radicals, end up like exhausting our spirits and bodies within the resistance and movement. So I feel like another gift of queerness is like, you know, that sort of tenderness. Like, you know, I think like all of the tenderness that we actually inspire the world with, like a lot of it is to kind of center in it first for us, you know, in this moment, because shit is really fucking ugly. I think also too, we have to like tell our allies, like, y'all need to take care of some of this fucking shit. Like for real. Like, and I also think like, you know, that shifts depending on where you are via LGBTQIA, where you are via racially, where you are, you know what I mean? Like all of these things intersect with one another. So I do think like, I also want to like be conscious of, you know, how people can lean in the spaces that, you know, they are privileged, and also I think reflect and care for themselves in the spaces that, you know, they might need extra healing at this moment. Because shit is, I mean, I'm in Red Wing on a, whatchamacallit, retreat right now. You know how many damn Trump and Pence signs I had to like see in order to even get to my, and when I see a Trump and Pence sign, that to me is automatically a Confederate flag. I'm like, y'all just can't put a Confederate flag up. So y'all got Trump and, like, period. Point blank, period. So I think like, yeah, that's really the energy. It's like, take care of yourself, take care of each other, and, you know, we'll live to fight another day and live another day and vogue another day.
Mm-hmm. That's a great question, Rachel.
I think I echo your sentiments, Junauda. And when I think about when I was in my teens and 20s, you know, you're so, by the time, and I don't want to speak for the younger generation, but a generalization that many of us could probably agree to is that by the time you're in your 20s, you've already experienced some kind of damage to your psyche, to your, you know, it's been hard because you're different. You don't quite fit into normative societies. You don't fit in at all. Or even if things are more accepting now, it's still hard. And so in your 20s, you're very protective of your little squishy parts. And it's very hard to let other people in. So if I had advice, and it's really not easy because I didn't really understand how to be kind with myself and truly have empathy and intimacy, you know, intimate friendships and partnerships built on actual trust until I was in my 40s. So if you can, in your 20s, be nice to each other, be gentle with each other, especially right now. There's other people that you can fight with on Facebook. Don't just be gentle with each other. That's all.
Thank you for saying that, both of you, Ty and Junauda. I would say, so right now I'm teaching the book. This is a class at the U. I'm teaching Aristotle and Dante Discover the Secrets of the Universe, in case you need some good reading. And it's interesting, you know, teaching a class that most likely has a lot of straight people, about the tenderness and how tenuous queer love can be, fragile queer love can be, especially at that age, 15 years old, is something that I just want to hold these like babies, you know, in the book and just tell them it's going to be okay. And I think for me, a phrase that I come back to that might seem dead for some people, but for me, it has so much, it's loaded with so much, is the phrase, "You're not alone." And for me, it's a twofold phrase. One, very much in line with what Junauda was saying and Ty was saying, that you're not alone in, you know, when you think about this feeling of feeling overwhelmed by so much pressure, remember that you're not alone in this, right? But for me, I think it's twofold, because I also think that whether or not you want to acknowledge it, there is a major responsibility of being queer and trans, especially in a country like this one that has so much wealth, where you invest your money, where you put your, you know, the restaurants that you support, the clothing that you support, the things you support, they end up having major repercussions globally. Your platform is not just a local or national one, it is a global one. And so in thinking about you're not alone, remember, you're in solidarity with a lot of other people. If there's one thing that you can do here for other people abroad, you know, or just even for your communities, it's gonna go very, very far.
Yeah.
Thanks so much for your answers. Those were fantastic. Older siblings.
Do we have time for?
We could be elders. I didn't mean to shut down the elders thing. I'm just saying. I gotta get more responsible. You know what I'm saying? I just don't. That's all. I could be that too.
Oh, queer fam, we're all figuring it out. We all been figuring it out. We're all, you know, it depends upon the day, I think, what family member we play, right? To each other. So we'll just let that be what it is. Sherry, were you trying to give us one more question?
Oh yeah, I wanted to see, do we have time for that? For one more question from the audience?
I think we do. And I just want to say, like, this energy has been so beautiful, y'all. It's hard to say goodbye. So know that we won't be saying goodbye. We can find each other on the internet, on these social media streets. Folks like to say. And so if you do feel like, you know, I think it's one thing that I miss about being social too is the networking. And maybe you weren't like, maybe we weren't actually exchanging it, you know, Instagram handles in person, but we can do that in the chat here. So if folks want to like drop anything in the chat, you know, like, and you know, develop your feed and your relationships outside of this room, you're more than welcome to. Yeah, one more question. I think that's great.
Dick, did you have something?
Huh?
I thought maybe Dick had something to say, but I'm not sure if he's muted or not.
I'm unmuted, I think. Can you hear me?
I can hear you now, yeah.
Okay. I just want to say, my name is Dick Hewitson. I'm out in California. I noticed there were as many as 45 people, and I guess there were more than that because Rachel mentioned the people at McAllister. But all of you represent a dream come true of two old gay guys who had a few books in their condominium in St. Paul. David Irwin, the late David Irwin, and I had these books, and we had this idea that they should be available to other people. And that was the beginning of Quatrefoil Library. And one of our hopes was it would be a place where authors could come and read. So I want you all to know that you have fulfilled my dream and David's. Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, is it that time?
This has been so beautiful. It's been beautiful. Yes, thank you, Dick, for sharing that history with us. Thank you for bringing us in. Thank you for invoking the magic that has brought us here today to share space. And I do feel like our ancestors were with us today, y'all.
Yes.
Anybody else got chills right now? Like, it's not, you know, the veil is thinning. We are here. It is real. And in these difficult times, it's so important that we find each other. We are the medicine, right? We are the medicine for each other. We are so important. We are so beautiful. We are so multifaceted. And so thank you for spending time and taking time out of your busy schedules and finding us this evening instead of your Netflix account and reaching for the remote. So we'll be around. Sherry and I have some conversations to have about and some plotting and planning to do, but know that we're not going anywhere too quick. Keep your eyes peeled and posted, and we'll be back here with some more maroonage afoot.
Yeah. Thanks to the beautiful writers for sharing your work and your wisdom, your light with us.
Mm-hmm.
Appreciate you so much.
Thank you so much.
Mhm.
This is
And
amazing.
thanks all of you for being here.
My
And
pleasure.
Claude and
Love
Amanda.
everybody.
Thank you.
Stay
Nice.
safe. Mask up. Show up.
Everybody.
Do I just leave out the back door? Do I just step out?
That little Irish goodbye, you know.
Right.
Love you, Roy. Love you, Ty. I'm so like amazed by y'all work and so proud of y'all.
Thank
And-
you. Thanks for
Yeah.
sharing the virtual stage, letting me share with you.
Yeah, let you share with me. Letting us share with each other.
All right. Where's the wine?
Find the
I
right.
know, right? Where's the wine? Where's the cheese?
Please.
Oh, if we were at the library, I'd be having the wine out right now.
I know. That's like the
God.
thing I grieve is all the free wine and crackers and cheese and cookies
Oh,
I used to
yes,
get in Arthur Streets.
I have Chinese food waiting for me.
Oh,
Must be nice. Must be nice,
that's
Roy.
good.
Just kidding. But you know, my dad's first wife was from Honduras. My older siblings are half Honduran. I don't know if that matters, but that's my connection.
Yes. We got to talk more, Junauda, about especially, oh my God, there's so many questions I have, but I hope to one day teach your book, teach Ty's book in the class. That would be a dream.
Listen, I will show up to your class like, listen, it's one of my homies, y'all. What questions y'all have? I would love that. I would love, and anytime you want to connect, like,
Of course.
I'm always down to connect with everybody. You too, Ty.
Yeah, that'd be nice. I haven't seen you in a minute. And Roy, I'm just gonna DM you random Courtney Love lyrics every day.
Yeah.
Wait, Courtney Love and I are the birthday twins, though. How come Roy just gonna skip over me? I'm the one who tweeted about it.
Okay.
Columbus. Oh, too soon.
What'd you say?
Nothing. No,
You can text it to me.
I'll text you. It wasn't a good job.
Yeah, Rachel's been teaching my book, and yeah, I really fucking appreciate that shit. Got me a McAllister.
Oh, I appreciate it too, because it's a delight to teach. And it comes off as favorites from multiple students every time. So
Aww.
yeah.
That's dope. That's thank y'all, man.
Yeah.
Thanks.
If you haven't seen it yet, you got to go and read the story about Rachel in the Quatrefoil newsletter that came out this summer. It's available on our website and at our.
Oh, okay, I'm all over it. Let me find more about Rachel. Rachel, were you Scorpio, right? Is that what?
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah.
I
So
remember
you know everything about me once you know I'm a Scorpio.
No, that's not the case. But I have a lot of judgments about you now that you know.
I welcome them.
No. I'm a Cancerian, so we water family. We got to stick together.
I remember.
The Scorpio intensity is good for creative output.
My dad is a Scorpio, and I mean,
I'm sorry about that.
no, he's a super problematic figure. But I do feel like, so much of magic, that I inhabit, came from him too. So.
Yeah, I'm also a second generation Scorpio, so
Oh, yeah, my sister is too. Yeah, that's some deep shit.
it takes a lot of therapy.
Oh, that's good. Well, I love y'all. I don't want to leave y'all. Wish I could really be snuggling up on y'all, but I'll let y'all be to your Netflix and thing.
We love you.
Love y'all. Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Good to meet those of you I'm just meeting now. I hope to meet you more.
Yes.
I'm going to stop the recording right now.